What is up, guys? Today we are going to talk 2024 NFL Draft Stock Report. We're talking about the quarterbacks today. It's been a fun weekend of college football. I know the NFL's back, but we're still talking about college on this channel. Stick with us through the intro. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll catch you on the other side. All right, guys. I'm gonna be doing this weekly. So I'm gonna take a look at NFL draft stocks. So things that are happening that are potentially affecting these players. Obviously, you know how that works, but today I want to talk about the quarterbacks because I think that there's been some conversations. I know we don't have a huge sample size, and I will certainly come back around to the quarterbacks. We'll probably talk about the quarterbacks quite a bit, but I do want to mention that there are some guys that they are looking pretty good right now. Obviously, this 2024 class in general is a really good class, and they're showing why. First guy we're going to talk about, the guy, Caleb Williams, the clear number one quarterback in this class, in my opinion, through two games, 86.1 passing grade per Pro Football Focus, 82.6 adjusted completion percentage. 13 of 19 for 250 yards when blitzed. Now, this is something that's been sticky for the last 2 years. He is incredible when facing a blitz. You have to pretty much throw 3 or 4 man rushes at him, and that makes it incredibly difficult. There was one play against Nevada where there's some discourse going on social media about if it's translatable, but he does the Patrick Mahomes scramble drill in the backfield. There are guys that are coming after him. It doesn't matter. Caleb Williams is able to create outside of structure. This is a stock watch. Caleb Williams' stock was already very high, and I actually think that through the first 2 games for USC, I kind of think that it's gone up a little bit, not necessarily because other people's stocks have gone down, but because we're seeing that Caleb Williams is taking that next step. There have been times where he's gone through his reads and just stood in the pocket. I think he's capable of doing that. I think they tell him they don't want him to do that. That's not the best version of Caleb Williams, especially with this level of competition that he's consistently facing. Now, we'll see what happens when he gets to the big games. We're not going to see that for a couple of weeks here, but I do think that this is an opportunity for Caleb to really cement himself as the top overall pick. Obviously, we'll see if he declares this year based on some of the things happening. I think it was a GQ article where he said, he'd be willing to go, or his dad said he'd be willing to go back to school if he wasn't feeling the team that got the number one overall pick. I will suggest to Caleb, if you see this, just declare and tell him you're not going to sign, and then someone else will trade for you. That's, Eli Manning did that. Next guy we're going to talk about, Drake Maye. Drake Maye versus South Carolina. It was his debut this past weekend. 70.0 passing grade under pressure, 24 of 32 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 picks, 90% adjusted completion percentage. I think maybe 3 of them were actually incompletions. He did face a few drops from that North Carolina wide receiver core, which unfortunately will not be getting Tez Walker. That was kind of the news yesterday. One thing I want to talk about with Drake Maye, the 2 interceptions were kind of bad, and I think a lot of evaluators right now are kind of glossing over those, but it was in crunch time, and it was a time for him to go put the game away, and he made 2 really. One was a bad decision, one was a decent throw. It wasn't placed perfectly, and that's what gave the defender an opportunity to intercept it. Um, Outside of that, though, the pre-snap stuff that Drake Maye does is incredible. I think he sees the field incredibly well. I think the creation outside of structure is very, very much so a step down from Caleb, and I think that that's something that NFL teams will note as they watch his film. But all the pre-snap stuff is great. The mechanics don't look all that much improved yet. We'll see if it matters. He's got a really big arm, and he can kind of make up for some of those deficiencies. But I do think I've talked about it. It might have been just on our Patreon, but he brings the ball pretty low when he's going through his throwing motion. And it's not a long throwing motion. He gets through it pretty quickly, but it's kind of a windy throwing motion. So I do wonder if getting with a quarterback coach, he'll improve some of that stuff. But overall, I don't think his stock has moved a whole lot. I think that the 2 interceptions are certainly something to keep an eye on because Drake Maye was pretty careful with the ball. I I do like that he's taking shots though, and trying to fit balls into tight windows. He did it all last year, but that's something that not a lot of college quarterbacks are doing, and so that's the exciting part. These two specifically do that incredibly well. Next guy, JJ McCarthy, another guy that is throwing into tight windows now, something that he really didn't do last year. Versus East Carolina, 26 of 31 for 280 yards and three touchdowns, 94.1 passing grade. It was good for second in the nation behind a guy that we're about to talk about here shortly. NFL throws all over the film. He's driving the football. He's got tuned up mechanics. I spoke about this recently, but JJ McCarthy is very much so right in that tier, right behind Drake May to me. I think he sees the field really well. I think that, if you need him to throw opposite hash, like a corner route, he can do it. He's got the arm strength. I think sometimes he can lack touch, but I think we saw a little bit of improvement in that area as well. This is my QB3 heading into this year, and I think that there are going to be opportunities for him to prove that. There are certainly guys that are in that mix as well. But right now, JJ McCarthy looks like a top 10 NFL draft pick. I'd put him up against the last two classes pretty well. He might not be Stroud. Stroud was my QB1 last year. I don't think he's going to be Bryce because Bryce just is such a smart football player. Not saying that JJ isn't, but I do think that JJ McCarthy would be right there in the mix with the Anthony Richardsons of the world as a top overall pick in last year's class. So another guy, Michael Pratt. Michael Pratt's a guy that I recorded a video for this channel a few months ago, and I didn't have the sound on, and my mic wasn't working that day. And I don't know if I ever came back and recorded it, but it was kind of three guys. One was Ray Davis, the running back from Kentucky, but a few guys that I thought weren't getting a ton of draft hype via the draft community or the fantasy football community that have a chance to become first round picks. Michael Pratt certainly did his part in trying to make that happen. Versus South Alabama, he threw 15 times and it was 100% adjusting completion percentage. 14 of 15 with a drop in there, 293 yards and four touchdowns, four big time throws. And to put that into perspective, I think Caleb has 8 on the year, so he's pacing like Caleb Williams. Very smart football player, throws with anticipation, knows where to go. He's started a lot of football games. We've seen through the last few years in the NFL that matters quite a bit in terms of translating to the NFL. I think Michael Pratt has a fantastic opportunity, especially this weekend. They get Ole Miss. It's a big matchup. Ole Miss's defense isn't really anything difficult to overcome, but a lot of eyes will be on this game, and I think Michael Pratt's going to start to generate some hype. I think maybe I'm not comfortable calling him a first round pick just yet. There aren't many guys that I'm comfortable saying that they will land there. But I think Michael Pratt has as good a chance as some of these other guys to become that, and I'm really excited to watch Tulane play Ole Miss this weekend. Speaking of which, Jackson Dart versus Mercer, 18 of 24, 334 yards and four touchdowns, 93.2 passing grade, zero turnover worthy plays. That is the most noteworthy thing that we will talk about here. And then 3 of 3 when under pressure. So he didn't see a lot of pressure, but he was really good when under pressure. And that is something, going back 2 years now, I think at one point I had Jackson Dart ranked ahead of Caleb Williams. Just shows you like Davy ranks can change. I was wrong on that clearly, but Jackson Dart to me on his freshman film he was making those throws, those anticipatory throws under pressure, which is something that only really that's what you see from good NFL quarterbacks. If Jackson Dart has taken the next step as an accurate passer, we certainly need to see more consistency from him. But he's a toolsy kid that is going to have a lot of spotlight there with that Ole Miss program. Obviously, this is Mercer. We need to see him do it against real teams. But if he puts together a good year, this could be one of those late risers that, he's a little bit off my radar at this point compared to, where I had him back then. But I think that there's a good shot that he winds up maybe as a top 50 pick, top 100 pick, provided that he declares. I think there's a good chance that Jackson Dart goes back to school and becomes a top 20 pick. So we'll see. It's definitely something to monitor, but stock pointing in the right direction, definitely way up on this kid. All right. we're gonna just go through some of these quarterbacks to keep an eye on. Shadur Sanders, people are gonna be mad that I didn't talk about him. Obviously, his stock is up. Everyone kind of knows that. I'm not providing any new information. I will say I caught some all 22 clips of Shadur Sanders. A lot of really good things. Very smart football player. Knows exactly where to go with the football. A lot of people were knocking him because he threw to the running back a lot. That's what the defense gave him. That's how it was schemed up. He did a fantastic job. I think he can fit the ball into tight windows. This is a four-star recruit, guys. It's not like Shadur Sanders is this, small school guy that transferred in. No, I mean, he's Deion Sanders' son, and he was a four-star quarterback recruit. I think we're gonna see what he actually is, though. I don't love his mechanics. I really don't. I think he's got the over the top throwing motion that almost every NFL quarterback has moved away from. He needs to be more rotational with that. I think that does hinder his arm strength and his ability to kind of drive the football, but he's certainly someone to watch. He's 100% in that mix for QB3 at this point, and I think he's got a pretty good opportunity. Nebraska's defense isn't great, but they're fast and they can match Colorado's speed at the skill position. The skill positions. So I'm excited to see this matchup this weekend. And some reports of some high profile guys being at that game from my inside sources at Colorado. So we'll see if that actually comes true. Quinn Ewers gets Alabama this weekend. We talked about it on the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show this week. I'm not certain Quinn Ewers is ready for that matchup. I'm not sure what happened. We go back to 1 year to this Alabama matchup, and I do think that Quinn Ewers had a good deep ball, and I don't think that I ever questioned his ability to throw a deep ball. And then he came back from injury, and he has not been able to find it. Against Rice, he was super inconsistent throwing the ball downfield. Most of the things that he was succeeding at were the short to intermediate stuff or the wide open guys that were schemed up. Against this Alabama defense, I don't think he's going to get that. And so we're going to see what kind of quarterback Quinn Ewers is. I think the leash is going to be pretty short for a Texas team that wants to go to the college football playoff and has Malik Murphy sitting probably as the best backup in college football. If I had to pick one right now, I think I'd pick him as the best overall. So we'll see. Stock down on Quinn Ewers, though, I think, sadly. Jalen Milrow, same game. So you can watch one game and you can keep an eye on both of these guys. Jalen Milrow looked really good last week. I think, he made a throw off of his back foot that was really impressive. Some of the stuff throwing the football looked really good. That was the big question coming into this year was we knew he was a talented runner. Could he take care of the football and could he throw and go through, all of the progressions? I think he's taken a step forward. And I think this is 100% one of those guys where I don't know if he's going to be in this class. I think he needs to start a little more. I think he could stand returning to Alabama for another year, but it's a kid that has the tools to become a top tier NFL draft pick. So keep an eye on it. I'm not there yet, clearly, but I think that's someone to mention. Riley Leonard, big win over Clemson last week. Really it wasn't all him that did that, but I will say he was, gutsy out there. He was throwing the football. The Duke receivers aren't going to give him a whole lot, and I don't know that he was placing the ball when throwing downfield very well. So it's something to look out for. I didn't have questions about his ability to throw downfield last year. So if he's gotten better with the short to intermediate stuff and that rushing aspect is still there, Riley Leonard is currently my QB4. And so I'm going to keep an eye on him for the rest of the year. Michael Penix Jr., guy that I've loved for a really long time. I don't know how the NFL is going to feel about this kid. He's got really rough mechanics. He's just an arm thrower. He doesn't really rotate. And I wonder if that's due to the injuries that he's experienced in his past. I think the NFL is going to have issues with the injury history. And so I'm a little skeptical to say that his stock is up, but he also had 4 touchdowns in the first half last week against what was a pretty good Boise State defense. So I'm keeping an eye on him. I always watch the Washington offense. Same thing with Oregon. Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix has an opportunity to vault his way into those discussions as well. I think he's looking like a top 50 player. Good blend of tools, and we've seen the growth from him from Auburn to last year. And I think we're going to see that trajectory still point upward. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see what Bo Nix can do with this Oregon team. Joe Milton, have to mention him. He threw the ball like 90 yards. I don't know. Didn't look good, though. I think the stock is trending downward for Joe Milton. I think that there were certainly some throws that he wishes he had back. He was just kind of firing the ball all over. I think he could stand to throw some touch. I know when you can throw 150 miles an hour, you like to, but that's someone that I think could stand another year of starting, but sadly he's in his 6th year, so I don't think that that's gonna work out for him. 5th year, 6th year, whatever. It all meshes together. KJ Jefferson is the last one I want to keep an eye on. Toolsy guy looks like he's gotten some Jalen Hurts comparisons, and I kind of like that. In terms of play style, he's a bigger guy, but he can run the football. He can throw the football pretty accurately downfield, but his ability to create is fantastic. So I think that's another guy that I'm watching throughout this season. Obviously, not all of these guys are going to continue trending upward or downward. I think that there will be highs and lows for all of these players, but I'm excited to see what level of consistency these guys come out with. So, um, that'll do it for this episode. Again, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate all the support. If you're interested in more of this content, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/the Debbie Royale, where you can find, we've got a ton of stuff. We've got a college football manifesto. We've got a Discord that's pretty active, especially during college football season. So feel free to join us today at that link. Until next time.